I just want to reiterate everything that everyone's been saying. I believe in what we do here. We know you have a lot of great options. We don't know what's right for your life, but the Lord does. And we genuinely will be praying for you as you are trying to discern where the Lord is leading you and what He's calling you to do in this life. And so we hope that tonight will be of use to you, and we're happy to hear from you afterwards. I've been asked to talk to you a little bit about ethics, and I'm afraid we will oversell what I'm going to be offering to you tonight. I'll probably raise more questions than I'll give you answers. But what I want to try and do tonight is show you just how important it is to think well on life, and to do so from Scripture with theological reflection into a world. We're not doing things just in the abstract, things that stay in books, but we're actually trying to meet people where they are. And I think one of the most crippling realities for Christians today is the constant bombardment of information. I think the internet is absolutely just overwhelming on most days. And it's not just because of the factual kinds of information that's there, but also so many opinions. And I think when we start talking about ethics and how we're supposed to live in this world, we have so many voices about what's right that many people just don't know what's right anymore. And most people now live out of fear of getting left behind. I get worried that I don't know all the facts, that somehow I'm not going to represent the consensus, that somehow people are going to think ill of me because I'm not in the know, or that I'm thinking what was right yesterday. And I feel like that kind of shifting landscape of what was right then but not right now is a constant problem for us as we live as Christians. We feel like things are always changing, and I want to ask you if they really are. In the Bible we read that our God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That He made the world and He rules over it. And Christians, I think, need a renewed confidence. A renewed confidence in the God that we serve, in the goodness of His word for our lives. But I also find that many Christians feel a lot of pressure to conform to the age. And so even when they might be receiving good teaching in their church, they feel quite alone in the workplace or their school or their home. And they have possibly lingering questions about how to engage with the culture they live in. More so, I suspect they're even deeper than that. Can what we say we believe withstand the test of time? Now, this kind of thoughtful interaction with the world is not easy to come by, the kind of thoughtful interaction that I think is required of us. It's one thing to be told what's right and wrong, and it's another thing to begin to have that conviction in your guts. I mean, just imagine my children, for example. I have 4 kids, and if I were to just tell my kids, this is right, this is wrong, I hope there's enough trust in me that I'm not going to lead them astray. But at some point, they're going to say, you know, Dad said that, but I'm just not sure. I mean, was Dad right? I like to think that I'm right about most things, but my kids don't. They don't think that I'm right about everything. I love getting stood down by my 5-year-old just telling me, no. I think, really? A wise sage, you know better than Dad. That's great. I still deal with it with, students, but that's great. We have a lot of things we have to work out in terms of trust and authority. And Mark gave us a great presentation today about the Scriptures that abide, Scriptures that have power to save, Scriptures that, if followed, aren't going to be easy. In fact, they're going to lead us to persecution. And I think that's going to happen to us because of what we hold to as good and right and true. It's difficult to know, can we still live by what we say we believe? And I thought I would just open up this very practical example today of confusion around gender. Nothing simple, obviously. A real struggle for so many. In fact, I hear more and more stories as I visit places of people who themselves are struggling with their own identity, about what gender actually is, about what their child feels that they are, about what their spouse has said that they now are, about homes being broken, about children wondering if they're even human. I mean, it is a really tricky space. And I think in our guts, we want to react with a kind of easy answer, a simple, dogmatism that just kind of steamrolls people. Or maybe we want to actually just throw our hands up and say, well, it's just too tricky. You just do whatever you want to do, and we'll just kind of leave you alone. That's not really loving, because that's not actually standing in what we believe is true. So how do we actually hold something true to engage a world that is so lost and so confused and desperate to know what's real? That's what we're trying to form you in here at Moore. We're trying to begin with a real foundation, a lay of the land, if you will, of how the Bible works and how we can engage with it in a meaningful way, how we can really know truth about this world. And then as you progress through that, we're going to dig deeper into the doctrines of that word, discovering more and more of the riches there and that treasure. So then you can be deployed, as David said, out into a world where you don't just take truth in abstract, but you can take truth to situation. All the mess of life. You can actually have the skills to analyze situations and to wisely and lovingly and carefully apply truth to situation, even in the midst of real mess. And to do that prayerfully. And so as we think about this very difficult topic of gender, people have a lot of questions about whether or not it's binary. If it's fluid. Is it a choice or is it an assignment? Is it biological? Is it sociological? Do modern technological advances enable suffering souls to be liberated from feeling trapped? And I don't want you to feel a lot of pressure in this, okay? You're coming out for a steak dinner and a pep talk about life. But I want you to actually just begin to meaningfully try to engage with this question. Modern confusion about gender. Somebody comes to you and they say, I'm not sure about my gender anymore. Or my child doesn't know if they're a he or a she. They just want to be they. Or my child's a furry. They actually think that they're an animal. They'd rather that I treat them as a lion, not as a human being. And this is really happening, like really, really happening to people in churches. So how do you begin to address that question? I don't want you to feel pressure to answer that question, but I want you with people around you, 2 or 3, without any threat of judgment, just to begin to think, how would you begin to approach that topic, and what would be required for a responsible answer, a responsible, livable Christian answer? And if that's too much for you to decide, what are the challenges you'll face in offering a solution to that question? I'm going to give you about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Go for it. You chickened out. All right, everybody, thank you for your discussion. For those brave souls that might be willing to just share a couple of bits about what's required for an answer like this. An answer to this question, what do we make of gender? What is gender? How do we understand gender? Where do you begin? Or what are the challenges even, if you want to share a challenge? That's a little bit perhaps easier. It's easier to talk about how hard it is rather than to talk about what we should do. So that's what I try to do in my ethics class, by the way. I just talk about how hard things are, and everybody leaves like, I have no idea. And I said, well, me either. We're journeying together, aren't we? No, I'm kidding. I really try to help people out, I promise.
I think empathy and patience are required when people are asking big questions about their identity and those kind of struggles. It's really emotionally fraught. The relationship between a parent and a child in that is really emotionally fraught. So yeah, kind of having empathy in that space and having patience that we're not going to solve this in one conversation.
That's a really wise answer, thank you. The answer that was shared is we need empathy. We need the wisdom to know that we probably aren't going to solve something in a single conversation, but that we actually need to understand how difficult it is for people to walk through this and to meet them where they are and love them patiently. That's a really helpful, wise answer. It's a very Christian answer, by the way. I mean, you think about online space, how these debates unfold, and it's just one-line attacks. This is what's right. This is what's good. This is why that's evil. This is why you're evil. This is why, and it just spirals from there. But to actually meet somebody who's in that situation, it's hard. To talk to somebody who's really struggling about their identity and to hear how they're feeling, however misguided they may be, to hear how they're feeling, that takes patience and that takes thoughtful interaction, not just a smackdown of truth. That's really important. Thank you. What else? Yes?
Theologically, we were kind of thinking, well, you want to go straight to creation, establish kind of God as the creator, and therefore that gives us kind of, I guess, some constraints in how we're made.
Yeah.
And then we also talked about shifting towards something like fall. And so our discussion was about confusion. Why am I confused about my gender? That suddenly becomes normal.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you look at that, you can see something really good in God's design, making man and woman. I mean, there are binary sexes and the genders that correlate with the sex, right? Male and female. And as we think about these two ways of being, what happens when the fall comes and we've rebelled against God's ordering of the world? How does that disorder now impact us millennia on? Does it impact our biology? Does it impact our psychology? Does it impact our sociology? I suspect the answer is yes. But if that's the case, and somebody is, if you will, experiencing the fall and brokenness after the fall, how responsible are they for how they feel? Are they culpable? Is it something they should just embrace however they feel? Is feeling reality? What else? Yes?
I think we seek clarification. Like, is that what's really happening right now? Or is that what's underlying situation? It's probably related to the other things that leads to these emotions being expressed. So trying to find what's the underlying cause.
Yeah.
And maybe working on that might help solving this directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
Without then putting that back. So this is what the Bible can say about you.
Yeah, yeah, very helpful. Thank you. We have a presenting issue here. But what does it mean to actually be a person and a self? How are we formed? Well, what comes into our formation is a whole lot of things, right? And understanding each of those different components that make us up to who we are is a very complex being in one sense. We have to understand each of those forces and understand a better, if you will, diagnostic of what's going on in our lives. Maybe one more? Yes.
We want to offer them the hope of the gospel.
Yeah, thank you. What kind of hope can we offer? So here you are, you're feeling a tension in your life. Does Jesus offer you anything good? Does he say just be whatever you want to be? Do whatever you want to do? Or does he say follow me? In faith, follow me and trust that I'm good. Trust that I will lead you to life. Now that takes convictions in our guts, first of all, that the gospel really is good news. It's good news not just as blanket kind of capital S sin, but all the manifestations of sin. It's good for all of that. It's total. It deals with our problem at its deepest depths. And it offers every single person the promise of life. Life to the full. Now that's a message worth proclaiming. And it's a message worth persevering in, even when a culture says no thanks. But where else are they going to go? Right? Jesus has the words of life. This has only really opened a can of worms, hasn't it? We haven't done much, but we have begun to think on how important it is to see an integrated curriculum. What does Scripture say? How does it help us to understand the world, who we are as human beings, the God who loves us, what it means for us to be transformed as we encounter the gospel, and what hope it holds for us? How can we approach a world there that needs help, but also a world here that needs help? That's the kind of ministry we want to be formed for, to take the gospel to the world. And so I hope that is an invitation to you all. I'm going to turn over to Dan.